We have all heard of the name Shakespeare at least once in our lives, but when you hear the story of Macbeth, what do you think of? Grief, tragedy, greed, all of the above? Well, you're about to find out on this episode of SKK. I'm Kaida.
And I'm Sarah, and we're going to be speaking on the story of Macbeth and his character development leading to his untimely downfall, as well as how greed led to his actions.
So how was Macbeth in the beginning of the play, Sarah?
Well, in the beginning, Macbeth was a good man as well as a ruthless soldier who didn't really show mercy to his enemies. But when he came across some of the witches with Banquo in Act 1, Scene 3, his aura sort of changed.
So, what did the witches say to him and Banquo that made him change?
Well, first, the witches told Macbeth that he'll be both Thane of Glamis and Cawdor, as well as king, and they told Banquo that his children will be king instead, as well as some other things as well. And we can actually quote that what the witches said, since in lines 51 through 53 it says, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. All hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter."
It also says that lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy, yet much happier, thou shalt get kings, through thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. Banquo and Macbeth, all hail, in lines 68 and 72.
So what are your thoughts on the first act, Kaida?
Well, Sarah, after looking over it, I thought the act was foreshadowing in a way because it kind of gives hints on what might happen later in the play.
I also agree with that, but I also thought this was a turning point from Macbeth's overall character, as early as it is, because knowing that Banquo's children were going to be king, it kind of triggered him since he does something that proves this.
Alright, well, I think it's time to move on to the other act. What about you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I kind of thought this act really connected to the main theme of the play, which is greed, because Lady Macbeth's greed really played a role in the death of King Duncan, since she wanted to become queen so badly. What do you think, Kaida?
I also agree with that. And I also think that this act focused more on visualization because of the way the writers described what Macbeth is feeling after he killed Duncan. For example, saying things like, "I'll go no more. I am afraid to think what I have done. Look on't again, I dare not."
Oh, now that I think about it, we can't forget about the famous dagger speech.
Right! Why don't you refresh everyone's memory and explain what happened during the speech?
Well, to put it in simpler words, he draws his dagger and debates whether he's lost his form of judgment because he was actually considering killing King Duncan. He also says something that really proves this. It's in Scene 1, line 1551, "A dagger of the mind, a false creation, proceeding from the heat-oppressed brain."
It seems like he was really confused.
Yeah, well, should we move on to the next act?
We shall. So, what exactly happened in the next act, Sarah?
So in this act, Macbeth is now king and is kind of abusing his power.
How so?
Well, he's essentially getting rid of everything that might lead him to not being king anymore. Like in Scene 3, for example, he sends 3 murderers to kill both Banquo and his son Fleance, and thankfully, Fleance manages to get away.
And he does this because of what the witches told him back in Act 1, right?
Yeah, basically. And later on, Macbeth holds a dinner banquet and soon starts to get delusional and somehow sees the ghost of Banquo, which symbolizes how his guilt and regret for killing him is getting the best of him. There's also a couple of lines that shows this. It's in Scene 4, lines 113 to 116. "Avaunt, and quit my sight. Let the earth hide thee. Thy bones are marrowless. Thy bones is cold. Thou hast no speculation in those eyes which thou dost therewith."
You know, I never realized how much this was affecting him.
Yeah, well, after knowing this, what do you think about this and the act in general?
Well, based on this act, I kind of feel as though he's becoming more greedy as the story goes on, because as you said before, he's getting rid of everything that might lead him to not becoming king anymore, which shows how much he actually wants to stay king. Knowing this, I also feel as if he might kill a lot more now, which will really bewilder his mind with guilt and regret because of how he's acting currently, when he's personally killed someone with no form of outside influence. I can't even imagine what he'll be like in the end. We're now reaching the end of the play, and some pretty important things have happened in these last 2 acts, right?
Yeah, so to put it into simpler words, Macbeth goes to visit the witches again, and they say some pretty important things.
What do they say?
Well, they basically showed him 3 apparitions. The first one was an armed head that told him to watch for Macduff, since he's the Thane of Fife, so he has a chance of claiming the throne. The second apparition was a bloody child that told him that anyone who was born from a woman can't hurt him. And the third apparition was a crowned child with a tree in his hand that told him that there isn't any hope for him to be vanquished, and that Macduff is most likely going to be involved with the death. The apparition also told him that the great burning wood would move to Dunsandane Hill before he dies.
Oh, didn't the witches also show him an apparition of 8 kings with Banquo being the last one holding a mirror in his hand after he demanded to know more?
Yeah, and after this, Macbeth sends the murderers he hired to kill Banquo and Fleance to kill Macduff and his family to ensure his safety of being king, but only kills his wife and his kids.
Wow, so he really wants to stay king.
Yeah. So as we're continuing on to Macbeth's downfall, Macduff and Malcolm, who was King Duncan's son, wanted to fight against Macbeth because of what he's done.
I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah, and get this. As Macbeth is getting ready for battle, his messenger tells him that the wood of Burnham began to quote-unquote move to Dunsandane, where the kingdom is, because Macduff's army used the branches from Burnham Wood to disguise themselves while marching to Dunsandane.
Oh, didn't you say that the witches told him before his death the woods of Burnham Wood were going to move to Dunsandane?
Yep, so his death is getting closer.
Ooh, so what happens next?
Well, soon enough, Macbeth and Macduff face off, and they begin to fight. But while they're fighting, Macbeth realizes the prophecy that the witches told him earlier, and sadly gives up the fight and dies to Macduff's sword.
Wait, didn't you say no one born from a woman can kill him?
Yeah, and I know you might be confused about this, but while they were fighting, Macduff actually reveals that he was brought out from his mother's womb. So you see how this all connects?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how this all unraveled and really supports the overall theme.
Really? How so?
Well, I think it shows how the death of King Duncan, Banquo, and Macduff's family affected both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth individually, as well as their relationship, since Lady Macbeth was overwhelmed with immense guilt and regret, while Macbeth took advantages of his power once becoming king.
Yeah, and I agree. And as the overall events began to escalate in the play, he also got more greedy, which also affected the relationship he had with Lady Macbeth.
Exactly. Well, that was a lot to go over now, was it, Sarah?
Yeah, so hope you guys liked this episode, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye!
Bye!